do a lot here out of this elementary division. I told you all, a small but mighty team. So without further ado, let me introduce you to all the folks that you are going to hear from today. We have Mary Jo Genesi, our Vice President of Special Education. We are also joined by Mary Vaccaro, our Vice President of Education Issues. Also, you've met Marisol Pena, one of our Ed liaisons with the Elementary Schools Division. A little bit later in the program, you will also meet Sierra Jorgensen, a member representative from our Grievance Department. We also have Chris Verdone from our Manhattan UFT Borough Safety Liaison, as well as Debbie Poulos, our Director of Contract Empowerment Department. So without further ado, we are going to start with the questions. And Marisol, I think you might have someone who is going to come on and ask a question to the group.
Yes, we have Jenny Smith. Jenny, you are able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, Marisol. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jenny. What's your school? Where are you?
PS 47, John Randolph in the Bronx.
Okay.
And
What's
so
your question, Jenny?
my question is, basically, when are we going to stop testing these kids so much? Because, I mean, how much assessment data does the DOE really need? In the past month, I have tested my kindergarten students in F&P, Acadians, On Demands, iReady, Mosul, Snapshots, and now with this screener, we're going to be doing more testing.
Vaccaro, I think this question was made just for you.
Just for me. I think it was developed for me. So Jenny, nice to meet you virtually. And for everyone on the call, I just want to tell you, so you shouldn't be doing all of this testing. So let's start there. The first screening that happens, early childhood, you were working with Acadians. And then if you were in the upper grades, you would have been doing either NWEA map, or you would have done an iReady, right? You shouldn't have been doing all. So let's just start there. That should have been happening. And that was part of the, I'm saying quick, I know that, so no one, throw that out to me that I know it's not really quick, but those were part of supposedly the quick screening that happened citywide. All of the rest of the F&P and the on-demands are another whole conversation that we should have at another day, because that's another interesting piece. Snapshots, Mosul, all that should have been happening. And I'm assuming by Mosul, Jenny, you mean that your school is doing one of the assessments that come straight out of the Department of Ed, and you're working on one of those. But with that being said, yeah, you needed a Mosul for your Heidi score. So we know that. So for anyone that's in K through 5, that would apply to you. Our 3K people in pre-K, that doesn't apply to you. But yeah, you needed some kind of Mosul score. But this is really what you've described as excessive. And I can't believe I'm saying this, and Karen will be shocked. This is not something the DOE is prescribing to. So they would agree with you as well. So when we meet with them, there's an understanding that the screening should have been done. And I'm not talking about the social emotional screening, but the academic screening first. Then there should have been some kind of testing that went on that was part of your Mosul, whatever you're using. And then at that point, or it might not have, if you're using state tests, if you're using the science at the end of the year, I know many schools are using that would be there. And then the next one would have been the social emotional learning. But if we went to a Department of Ed meeting right now and we sat with Deputy Chancellor Linda Chen, I'm not speaking for her, but I can tell you this whole, what you're discussing, as I wrote down as you were talking, that's way above what the expectations are. So I think something that you may want to do is have a conversation with your school leadership team. You definitely want to have a conversation with your AIS team in terms of what you really need and how you need to work that out. And our interventionists that we have, which I can talk Karen briefly about, we have 5 interventionists that could come out to your school and have a discussion with a group of your teachers in order to figure out how much testing should happen and what should happen, working alongside your principal and not against. So we're happy to do that as well.
I'm actually open for it. I would love to have it, because according to my principal, this is what the superintendent is requesting.
What district are you, Jenny?
12.
All right, we're coming out. You're gonna come, I'm gonna come see you, 47, right?
Yes.
We'll be
Thank
there.
you
So
so much
I will
for
give
your
you a
help.
call. I'll find you and I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll set up a visit.
Thank you, Mary.
No problem.
Marisol?
Yes, we have our next question. We have Tiffany. So Tiffany, you should be able to talk now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Tiffany. What's your school and district, hon?
Hi, how are you? I work for PS19 in District 24. I'm the UFT chapter leader and a self-contained teacher.
Excellent. What's your question, Tiffany?
My question is, what can we expect in terms of the evaluation process this year?
Karen, you want me to jump in?
Go right ahead.
All right, so evaluation should look very similar. And this question just came up, Karen. I'm going to share it with you later at a school I visited early this morning as well. And actually, as I did lunch periods at a school. Just want you, so the evaluation should look very similar to as it did pre-pandemic. Clearly, principals that are looking for group work, et cetera, that has to be thought about. You can't necessarily have children sitting face to face, turn and talk to your partner, breathe on them, et cetera. I'm being a little dramatic, but that might not be something that parents would want. Not only would you not want it, but parents may not want their child sitting shoulder to shoulder with someone else. So the evaluation should look very similar. For those of you that have taught before or under the HIDE, that is, in case people don't know, highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective, you would be getting 2 observations, one in the fall, one in the spring. And those would look similar. Again, I'm gonna say, and I see our colleague Ciara, you would file a complaint if you see something on there that really doesn't fit within the guidelines, and we will help you with that if you receive something that's a negative evaluation. But the evaluation should look very, very similar to what it has looked like in the past. Again, we think that it's probably that time because many of you, maybe some on this call, are new and maybe haven't been really trained and heard more about your evaluation system, and it might be a great opportunity for us to bring that up. So Karen, we may want to pull in a call on evaluation in elementary school and what it would look like. If you're, I should say, if you are in a 3K or pre-K, you're still under the old SRU. If you're new, it's SRU, but what we've known about in the past. And anyone that is not teaching 60% of their program, correct, Ciara, 60%, right? So 40% or less of their program, they would also be under the SRU. So if you're a pullout person, if you're the IEP teacher, if you're something else in the school, you might be under that SNU. But it should look very similar. And we can send out to you any of the guidelines that you need as we go along. And we'll definitely hold a workshop on it.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Terrific. Sarah, did you want to add something or we're good?
Yeah, I think I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Mary said in terms of complaints. If you receive an observation report that, just has copy and paste from the Danielson or is not rating components that are easily rated, like your classroom management or how you engage with students, or if you're not getting feedback within the 10 days or getting your report within 30 days, you should definitely file an APPR complaint, and we can help you out with that. And that APPR complaint form is online. You just go onto the UFT website and you can search APPR complaint, and that should bring that up for you.
Thank you. Marisol?
We have another question from Yahira. Yahira, you should be able to talk.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. My name is Jahira Eduardo, and I am from PS28, District 9. I am a special education teacher in the Horizon program. And my question was, are there special education, special considerations for pacing unit plans and evaluations?
So Mary Jo and I both will answer this, I think. Mary Jo, I'll jump on the part of the special consideration. So I should have said this as well. There are special considerations for observations, and that is on our website. So you can find that there. So let me start with that. So that might help a little bit with the pacing piece. The Department of Education, so I'm not going to do the compliance, Mary Jo will do that, but the Department of Education on their website in Teach Hub, they have a portion of their website that has all the pacing calendars and unit plans for most of the curriculums that are approved by the Department of Ed. So that's basically almost everything that you're using except for Teachers College. So that would all be up there, and you're able to figure out those unit plans, and you'll also be able to look at the pacing charts for them right there on the DOE website on Teach Hub. It's hard to navigate. It's not the best thing to navigate, but it is there. And again, we have teacher center people that would be happy to go over any of that. You shoot me an email, we'll connect you with a teacher center person that can help you if you're looking for any of those pacing charts and unit plans. So that's not the compliance, that's just the teaching and learning piece. Mary Jo, you want to do the compliance part?
Well, I've been receiving a lot of questions lately, in particular about Horizon. So, I mean, Horizon is a program where, it's for students on the spectrum, but they're not as high performing students as in the NEST program, which has a pretty rigid criteria for students to go into the NEST program. What I've been hearing here and there in the city is that, some of the students that are being put in the Horizon classroom, either there's too many students in there, or they're really too many with large behavior issues that are really impacting the way the entire class configuration is going. So what I would ask you to do is to please email me, because I have been trying to put this information together from different schools where we really need to get to these folks who are running this program, because what I'm finding is they've been a little lax or they've been relaxing some of the criteria for students to get in, which then impacts obviously how the whole classroom runs. So there are a number of them throughout the city. Please email me with the school and what all the precise information is, and I could work with you one-on-one from there. I did. Oh
no, go ahead, Mary Jo.
No, I was just going to say that I know there was a question that's pressing in here about, early on about, how much can we expect students with disabilities to really progress? And, I just want to touch on that. That's a really difficult question to answer across the city for every student with a disability, because there's also individualized. But I think the whole point of the recovery was to try to close the gap a little bit. The learning was really interrupted. So to try to, in an effort to close that gap without parents necessarily asking at an annual review meeting or through a due process hearing for compensatory services. So, it's really hard to answer that question, except to say that I think we want to see if we can get a recovery plan, or even if it's more of a long-term issue that the student has a brand new need, that really does need a change in IEP, whether it's a change in a frequency, duration, group size, or a service, because the child has now demonstrated a need that is going to be a longer term need. But it's just really important that while we're looking back to March 2020 to now, when we're really looking at the students and where their gaps are, the fact of the matter is we're just looking to see if we're getting a program in place for them that they're starting to make some progress, because we certainly don't want them regressing. But, students can only handle, just like teachers, so much in a day. And I think what's happened here is the way the recovery plan was laid out, with having minimum hours of instruction and minimum hours of related service, depending on what priority group the student was in, by how much, loss they had or lack of a teacher they may have had. It's almost too much for the students, it really, so it's so individualized. I guess I would say we want to stabilize them and see if they can at least start making some progress so they're not stagnant or regressing. So I just wanted to address that, Karen, because it was very early in the chat, that question. And I think it's very much related to not only has the rollout been very bumpy and messy with the recovery, but I think the expectation of how much can the students endure and how much do we have left to give. And the other piece of that there was another question in the chat, and I will drop the allocation memo in there. It said we don't have enough teachers. We know this, and that's why the allocation memo for the special ed recovery, which only came out a couple weeks ago, they will contract out these services, whether it's related services or instruction, tutoring, etc. They're gonna get as many CBOs as they possibly can to meet the need if you don't have that need in your school. But that's not your responsibility. That's the principal's responsibility. But I will drop the school allocation memo in the chat or the Q&A where it really talks about all that, and I'll answer that question. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Chris, I have to bring you into this discussion for a moment. You know, we asked folks to submit questions, and overwhelmingly, there were lots of safety questions. And the one question that kept coming up was around masking. And as a membership, it was very interesting to me because we're very divided. We have half of the questions that came in saying, thank goodness teachers are vaccinated, kids are slowly getting themselves vaccinated, and hopefully we won't have to wear a mask. And then there are just as many folks saying there's a new variant. I am hoping that just because we are seeing more people vaccinated, that we still have to wear our mask. Can you speak a little bit to masking?
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen, and thank you everybody for having me on the call. Thank you so much, everybody who is in attendance. So in terms of masking, I actually answered somebody's question before. The UFT is still endorsing the mask mandate. So within school buildings. So we know that currently masking is a legitimate strategy to reduce COVID-19 transmission in schools. So we don't want to do anything prematurely, and we have to follow, the science. We are going to consult with our independent medical experts and hopefully establish some criteria and thresholds that schools and their community must hit for masking to no longer be a requirement. But we're not there yet, though. Especially now that we have this new Omicron variant. Like Karen said, I'm in schools every single day. Everybody that I see, they're wearing their masks. The kids are wearing their masks. Adults are wearing their masks. But there is a division. There are some people like, oh my God, let's just get rid of these masks. Absolutely. But some of the things, if and when we get to that point, would be, for example, taking into consideration vaccination statuses in the schools and the community rates of transmission. Because I know right now, vaccination rates are increasing for a lot of our students, at least students, I could speak for students in the Manhattan schools. So again, this is something that's still evolving, but for right now, the mask mandate is still in effect in schools. The DOE is still enforcing it, and the UFT is still endorsing it 100%. Obviously, with the exception of when you're eating, drinking, so on and so forth.
And Chris, what about folks so we understand that you get up to 4 hours if you need to go get your booster, but if you're a parent and you need to take your children to get the vaccine, do we get time for that also?
Yes. So you're saying if
I am an educator, but I'm also a parent and I'm taking my own child to get vaccinated. Is there time for me to do that? What's the expectation around that?
Yes. So members will receive up to the 4 hours of paid release time per vaccine dose and or the booster shot. You should provide at least 3 days of advance notice to your principal or supervisor, depending upon where you work, for any such absence. Again, so appropriate coverage can be arranged. You will have to provide documentation of the appointment and then, also a receipt of the vaccine or your booster to your administrator. So everything, so whether you're getting the booster or your kid's getting the booster and you're an educator, that time will be given, and the payroll secretaries have the appropriate codes to put into ATS.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Stay with us. Don't leave us, Chris.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Excellent. So Debbie, I have to read this one to you. Folks are saying it's just a ton of paperwork. I don't know what to do with all this paperwork. I'm doing data gathering, I'm doing screenings, I'm constantly reporting, I'm recording on spreadsheets. I have a new curriculum. I'm being micromanaged all day, every day. Tell me, what is contract empowerment and how does that fit into this scenario?
So yeah, we're hearing that a lot. So one of the things that we do in our department is we oversee the operational process. And the operational process is a process to help you resolve issues related to the citywide standards. Safety is part of that, and any of the new agreements. So we started off with a paperwork reduction process, if anybody remembers, if you were here before 2014. And when we had that, because that was a real goal at the time, we had binders to remember, nobody should be doing binders anymore, but we had binders and tons of excessive paperwork. And so we negotiated that in 2014, and we were able to create 5 paperwork standards. My favorite one is the one paperwork standard number 1, which is paperwork related that is redundant, duplicative, unnecessary, and unreasonable around record keeping. So people who are doing Excel sheets or they're taking data from one location to another, that is the definition of a violation of paperwork standard number 1. We have standards around attendance and special ed services, and we have a standard around what work you could do during your PD time if you still have the 80 minutes, parent engagement time and OPW time. So what I'm hearing is that some of the work that you are being asked to do related to student record keeping might fit into standard number 1. If you're a chapter leader on this call, or if you're a member in the call, the chapter leader in the building can help resolve that issue on behalf of the entire chapter. And so you should all know that we've negotiated a different timeline for this school year, which is a little quicker. We have a 5-day resolution at the school level, a 5-day resolution timeline at the district level, and the central committee is meeting every Wednesday, right? Every week we meet to discuss any issues that were not resolved at the school or district level. We didn't have one meeting, which was last Wednesday, because there was nothing new, but we're back on tomorrow. So what you should all know is that you have these citywide standards. Let's see if we could get that in the chat. I don't have it available, but it's on the website. Familiarize yourself. The other standards, just so you know, besides paperwork, although that's my favorite, is in 2018, we also negotiated standards around curriculum. You are to be provided with curriculum as defined in the contract. There is a 1-page unit plan that was negotiated by the DOE and the UFT, and that is the only unit plan that you could be required to do. No 10-page unit plans and so on. You're not required to upload all of these kind of documents in any kind of digital platform. You're not required to put your lesson plans in any of the digital platforms. So, that is part of the standards for a curriculum. There's a PD standard. There's a standard around basic instructional supplies, which we are using quite a bit right now. Every teacher and functional chapter member should be provided with the materials and electronic devices and so on that you need to do your job and to service our students. So that's something that if that's not happening, you could try to resolve through that process. And then for our functional members in our schools, we do have workload and we have space. And those are very popular right now. So if you're a guidance counselor or a school psychologist and you're being asked to do work that is not part of your title. That is a workload issue. If they're giving you too much work that you can't get it done during the day, that's a workload issue. If you're an itinerant or a functional member and you have not been provided the space to service our neediest kids, that is an operational issue. So you have you have all of these things that affect what you do every day and how you are servicing servicing our students. And we have a mechanism in place for you to resolve them. We also have new agreements that were done recently, right, since September, because we're still in a pandemic and there's a bunch of things. There was one, Karen, I just wanted to mention that I saw a question. Guidance counselors should not be teaching classes. There was a temporary 1-week agreement during the week of October 4th only, when we were all concerned. Our members were concerned about safety with the students because the mandate was coming into effect, right? The mayor's mandate took effect that week. And people, in an abundance of caution, wanted to make sure that our members and students weren't put into an unsafe situation, put into auditoriums or overloaded with students in a class. And because of that, there was a 1-week agreement where if you could not find, because we were all having problems finding subs, right? And getting, just like the issue with special ed teachers, getting those people. There was a 1-week agreement where if you could not use people who are redeployed or use the people in your school to cover classes because you just physically don't have the people, then there was a temporary agreement to use a guidance counselor or to use a school psychologist and so on. And there was parameters around that. If they had to do more than one coverage, they got paid. They got paid for it. That ended. It was 1 week. So no one should be doing that anymore. And if you have any members in your building where your principal is saying, oh no, it's an emergency, I'm still allowed to do this, they're incorrect, they're misinformed, please contact your chapter leader and we could try to help you resolve that through the operational process. They will contact the DR and I'm here to help as well. I try to throw a lot in there, Karen.
No, we appreciate that. We appreciate that. There's a lot of, we need as much info as we can get. It's always helpful.
Yeah.
So, Sierra, I have a question for you. When folks submitted questions, we got a lot around lesson plans, which we haven't seen in a very long time. So it almost feels like a return to normal to get so many questions around lesson plans. And we know that principals can't dictate everything that's in our plans, but can you speak to lesson plans and also supplies? Lots of questions around supplies.
Sure. So lesson plans are for you as a teacher and by you as a teacher. So no one can dictate the format of your lesson plan. As long as your lesson plan can be followed by you to teach an effective lesson, then your lesson plan is great. If, however, you're struggling in lesson planning, if you have received prior negative ratings around lesson plans, if you have a developing rating, mostly if you have a developing or ineffective rating and you are being given a tip, within your tip, there can be suggestions around the lesson plan format that you should use. But outside of that, format of a lesson plan cannot be dictated. So again, as long as your lesson plan is in a format that you can teach an effective lesson, you're great to go. If you're noticing in your observations that your principal or evaluator is commenting on your lesson plan or rating only your lesson plan, that would be grounds for an APPR complaint. But you may find that your evaluator is grading how you use your lesson plan to teach or not teach an effective lesson, in which case you may want to change the way that you write your lesson plans. So that is on lesson plans. In terms of supplies, the contract requires that you are provided with basic supplies. I know as an elementary school teacher, my basic supplies issue is getting copies, getting paper, all of those types of things. If you are not getting the basic supplies that are required by the contract, if you aren't getting copies in time, if you aren't given the supplies that you need to do your job, there is a complaint process within the contract. It is not the same as a grievance process. It's not a grievance. You would file a separate complaint to be able to get those basic supplies.
So Karen, can I just add that that is exactly the what the operational process covers for basic instructional supplies. And we've done that successfully. So basic instructional supply, everything that Sierra just said, if you don't have paper, if you don't have the supplies you need, that is an operational issue. And that could be filed and raised with the, to resolve with your chapter leader and the principal. One thing about lesson plans that we do resolve through the operational process as well. If you are being asked to submit your lesson plans in a certain format, or if you're being asked to place your lesson plans in a certain place, like on the upper right-hand corner of your desk or on a clipboard outside the room because your principal thinks they're a doctor entering a hospital room, or in a basket, none of that should be happening. And that could also be resolved through the operational process. Paperwork standard number 1 is what we use.
Perfect. Thank you, Deb.
Just if I can take a second, Karen,
Sure.
to follow up on what Debbie said. If the one thing that you can grieve if it is not for some reason solved through the operational process, which often most things are resolved through the operational process. But if the format of your lesson plan is being dictated, or your lesson plans are being collected on a regular basis, like every Monday you have to turn in your lesson plans, that could be a grievance as well.
And Sarah, even if it's not routinized as in every Monday, if you find that every week you are getting a collection, would you still consider that to be routinized?
Yes.
Thank you.
Generally, we say lesson, your principal or AP can come in to look at your lesson plans whenever they want. But really, lesson plans should only be collected in conjunction with a lesson that you're teaching. Lesson plans don't stand on their own.
Thank you. Marisol, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment.
Okay, great. So we have Bryn Rosen ready to talk. Bryn, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, my question goes back to something that Deborah was talking about. I'm an occupational therapist at a lovely school in the Bronx. I have never been asked to do non-mandated work, but with the vaccine mandate, we lost a number of teachers, and now all related service providers and the school-based services team, we are being asked to help with arrivals every morning, and that is continuing. So my question is, can my principal use us for 20 minutes every day?
So that I would say no. I mean, there was an agreement last year where people, specifically actually guidance counselors, but OTs, PTs, no, absolutely not. That's not part of your job. I know people want to help their school and be team players, but if you're asking whether that is work that you're required to do, no, you're not. That would be a workload issue, and you could raise that with the chapter leader in your school. Did that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Marisol, do you have anybody else on the line?
No, right now that's it for people that are going to be live.
Okay. So let's see if we can tackle some of the questions that have come in via the chat also. Mary Jo, there's a question around the recovery, the special ed recovery. Did you want to share some information? I actually think we have some of your materials that we can screen share if you like.
Yeah, that would be great, Karen. I've been answering some stuff in the Q&A there, but yeah, we can go to the UFT website, and just at the top, it says teaching, and go down to the students with disabilities. I could at least help you to navigate the web page, because everything is up there.
Great. Just let me know when you guys can see my screen, okay?
Will do. There it is. We see it.
We see
Okay,
it.
so actually, if you could just click on the left there where it says special ed guidance for this school year, 21-22. Great. And you could scroll down a little bit. And everything is really right here on this page, to be honest. So as we go down, there's a lot of DOE documents here. We recently just added the P Digest, which is right there at the bottom of the screen. It says P Digest updates, because what I found is that either principals weren't sharing the information that they read in the P Digest about recovery, or whether maybe they weren't reading it, I'm not sure, but there was constant messages going out to principals about the recovery. And I found from my town halls and just emails that I was getting that the information wasn't trickling down to members. So we decided to actually take the special ed items that are in these P Digests, and we recently added this to our website. And if you just scroll down a little bit more, Marisol, you'll see there we have the recovery documents. It says academic recovery. So that first document is the overview for, gen ed, special ed, the whole thing that Mary Vaccaro and I worked vigorously on with the DOE all summer, getting special ed and gen ed people to coexist in a meeting or in a room together, because we really wanted to make sure students with disabilities weren't separate and apart from this recovery effort. Everyone talks about inclusion and, least restrictive environment, but we found it quite challenging to make sure that we had the special ed and the gen ed folks together when we were talking about recovery. And that's why students with disabilities also were to be, in RTI or AIS and receive those academic screeners. The special ed guidance, you could click on that if you want real quick, Marisol. The second one, special ed guidance. This is the document I've been referring a lot of folks to. And if you just scroll down to where there's a chart, you'll see what the special ed office did was they broke the students into categories based on highest priority needs. So, they looked in CSIS, they looked to see if a student didn't have a teacher for a long time. Yep, right there is perfect. And the students that really had the most missed, whether it's sessions, related services, or instruction, those students were put into priority one. All this information went from the special ed office to each school, where then the team at the school, the academic intervention team, or everybody has a different name for it, so I don't mark my words with the name, instructional team, whatever they call it. Okay, there was a team that was to look at this data in conjunction with the data from the screeners and really figure out how to functionally group students, as while of course the school as a whole was coming up with what could they offer for recovery to students, after school. Initially, this was all supposed to be as much as possible in person, after school or on Saturday. But I think as we went through the vaccine issue, the staffing shortage, etc., information was constantly changing, hence why I kept putting the information from the P Digest on the website. So now we're finding a lot of schools have actually come up with blended recovery programs. So the students were in these categories. Obviously, the priority one students were supposed to start recovery on 11/15, but because of a major busing issue and short staff, just a very bumpy rollout, it's been moved to December 6th. So while some schools do have, you can exit out of that, Marisol, thank you. While some schools do have a program already going, most of the schools are going to start on the 6th. Also on that same page, which you don't have to show, Marisol, but under that recovery, you'll see all the postings, the different postings, which unfortunately also have trickled out over time. The first postings were the speech, the paraprofessional, and the special ed recovery teacher. After that, a week or so later, came the OTPT, counseling. We're still waiting for the vision and hearing, which should be out any day. And so then we also had a gen ed content teacher, because ideally you would have wanted special ed teachers to work with special ed students, but we know there's always a shortage of special ed teachers. And so we really expanded, or the DOE decided to expand that to gen ed teachers that have been trained in interventions. And if they want to be trained in interventions, I think, Mary, you had told me that we do have an agreement that as long as you get that training prior to the program starting, you can go ahead and apply for that content teacher posting. So those are really the main parameters around it. I will just tell you that because it's been such a bumpy road with the transportation piece, that the pupil transportation, the Office of Pupil Transportation, is currently making more busing contracts. And just so I'm clear, the busing for students for recovery is for students that typically are reliant on specialized transportation. That's why District 75, this was such a blow with the transportation issue, because so almost all the students, right, get that specialized transportation. And we had schools where 150 parents wanted to participate in recovery or have their students participate. And then it dropped down to like under 50 when principals were turning around and saying, oh, no, we don't have transportation available. So right now, principals have been told, again, it's in that P Digest section, to offer parents Metro cards, reimbursement for whatever kind of transportation they would need to get their students to the recovery, or home from the recovery, I should say. So that is all really in the works. And that's in part why the deadline was pushed back so much. So that's just an overall, that's the overview of the most current updates, Karen, and definitely where you can find all that information on our website. So again, that's the teaching tab and students with disabilities this school year, and you'll find everything really listed. And whenever something's new, we just mark it new. The allocation memo that I dropped in the Q&A, that is there too. You know, it's really more something your chapter leader would probably look at and see, you know, have a good familiarity with that when they have consultation with their principal.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you for walking us through where to find this information on the web. That will make it a lot easier for our members.
Yeah,
Chris,
you'll
I have a
never
question.
find it on the DOE website,
Never.
not without a big hunt and a chase. So
I told you
I
they're
al-
messy.
yes, and their website is as well.
Chris, I have a question for you. And then after that, Mary, I have a question for you. Chris, is like a three-parter. One is, there were lots of questions around unclean classrooms and around cleanliness, and what do folks do if their buildings aren't clean enough? The second is around PPE. What do we do when we want or need more? And then thirdly, help folks understand partial classroom closures, full closures. How does that happen? And should I be told if I am in the building that someone has tested positive?
Awesome. Yeah. I was just answering questions from the chat. I didn't even realize my camera was off. I apologize for that. I just noticed that. I was like, oops. So I'm going to answer all of them in order. Karen, the first question was, again, I'm just sum it up again. I'm sorry, because I didn't jot it down.
Buildings that aren't clean.
Clean. And then the second one?
Around PPE, we need more of it. How do we get it? Who do we get it from?
And then COVID notification. Got it. Okay. So and this has come up in a lot of my schools in Manhattan. So if there are any issues with cleanliness, so anything, whether it's, you know, garbage is not being taken out, floors aren't being swept. For elementary schools, of course, if you know, rugs aren't being vacuumed, if there are bug or mice feces, anything like that, and your members, you're noticing this, the first step, we want to try to handle everything in-house. So the protocol would be, you would let your chapter leader know. The chapter leader would address this with the custodian engineer or somebody on the custodial staff and or the principal. If it's resolved at the school level, great. If the problem still persists, the chapter leader should be reaching out to one of us, one of the borough safety liaisons. At that point, the borough safety liaison also or our health environment reps, we will contact the deputy director of facilities who are in charge of the buildings for specific districts, and we will escalate the matter to them. Once it's escalated to them, it's typically resolved within 24 hours, but we always want to advise members to follow a chain of command. Let your chapter leader know. So we're not going over anybody's head. So your chapter leader should know. Chapter leader then has an opportunity to discuss it with the principal and the custodian engineer. And if there still is no resolution, and this has happened already about 1 million times in Manhattan, we pick up the phone, we call the DDF. We don't want to get anybody in trouble. We just want to say, hey, toilet paper is not being restocked, floors aren't being swept, floors aren't being waxed. There's still, garbage on my classroom floor, 2 days later, so on and so forth. So that's the protocol. And it's relatively easy for us to address those problems. Okay. But we want to follow a chain of command. PPE, very similar. So, and there was a question in the chat before. So every borough has a central hub or hubs where all PPE is located. The DOE is still centrally funding all PPE, the same PPE that was given last year. So that includes the adult and child masks, gloves, quat wipes, hand sanitizer, face shields, especially for our members who are in close contact with students. So all of these things are still centrally provided. If they're running out, there should be at the school level, there should be some kind of protocol already established that should have been done during the safety committee meeting. It could be brought up in consultation. But what happens is the custodian engineer or the custodial staff, who is ever in the building, it could be the fireman, it could be the handyman, it could be one of the cleaners, whoever is able to, will request, will put in the request, and or they will go to the hub. So for example, in Manhattan, the MLK campus is a hub and everything's there, the gloves, the masks, the air purifiers, the hand sanitizer, the quat wipes, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's an issue and you're noticing that things are running out and they're not being replenished, same exact procedure. Let your chapter leader know. The chapter leader will alert the principal and the custodial staff. If it's resolved, great. If not, you call the chapter leader calls one of us. We contact the deputy director of facilities. We take care of it. It's again, that's happened. That's been the least problematic issue so far this year that I've noticed. PPE is readily flowing in Manhattan schools, but again, easy fix. And then last but not least, so COVID notification. There was also a question from about cluster teachers as well. So right now, if there's a potential case or a positive case in a school, the principals have been advised to contact the situation room. The situation room is still in effect. Principals are given potential case letters and positive case letters to distribute to the entire school community, obviously without identifying the person's name, whoever was infected. It is then the principal's responsibility via contact tracing to let the individuals, whether it's the students or the members, know if they've been a close contact. That includes cluster teachers as well. So if a cluster teacher, happens to, see X amount of students per day and one of those students or, is interacting with an adult, the principal should be aware of that. Absolutely. So, you don't necessarily get to know the name of the person who's infected, but yes, you are supposed to be notified if you are a close contact. And yes, the entire school community receives 2 letters, a potential case letter and then a positive case letter, so that the entire school will be informed. And then the principal will inform the students and staff members that need to quarantine and or get tested, et cetera, et cetera. So that hasn't changed.
Wow. Thank you, Chris.
So yeah, yeah. And if there's ever any questions about that or issues at your school, again, chapter leader, us, let us know, again, I can only speak for Manhattan. No news is good news. Situation room / principal relationships have been pretty seamless. Really, again, like I said, we operate in the safety and health team. On the safety and health team, no news is good news. Like
And
cleanliness.
every borough has a safety liaison.
Yes.
So
Yep. So, and this is our bread and butter. So if there's an issue, the chapter leaders know how to reach out to us, and we'll always assist either directly or we'll guide. Absolutely.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mary, two questions, not totally related, but one is, as we're thinking about the paras, right? And we have them now joining TRS because it's important to us to make sure that they're being taken care of on the back end of their career. I think it's also important that we get our members to top salary. And in order to do that, they need their 30 above. And so thinking about the dollars, I want you to talk a little bit about what resources we have and how we're helping our members to get to the 30 above. And then not connected, but I also want you to address, we've gotten a few questions around curriculum and it being not developmentally appropriate. And so what do you do when you're in a school and you're being asked to use a curriculum and it's just not working for your students? And we've gotten a question around materials. How do we infuse more CRSE materials into our curriculum as well?
So let me start with the training piece in terms of paraprofessionals. So if you're a paraprofessional out there and you would like to take some workshops, let us know. If you want to take some classes and be a part of the career ladder, even better, let us know, because we would love to connect you with the right people in the para office in order to do that. And we're working with some of those colleges with Teacher Center in order to do that. So in terms of money, and I said this at the school, and I see a bunch of the teachers from the school I spoke at today on here now. So I will say it again and 100 times, because someone, Karen, raised their hand today and they were like, we don't have the 30 above, and we were all shocked. Somebody that we thought would have it. So big difference. Good friends of mine who retired 2 years ago. I know I'm stepping on toes. If Debbie Penny was on here, she'd say, Mary, stop talking. But there are people that retire without their 30 above. And for this particular person, it meant $1,500 a month difference for the rest of your life. So when you start thinking about that, starts adding up quickly, especially as we get raises and things are going on. So 30 above, we have tons of opportunities. Some are through Learn UFT, where we call it our UFT University, where we offer some L classes where you can get college level credits from us towards becoming an L teacher, an ESL teacher, TESOL teacher. I know everyone calls it something different recently. So an L teacher, you can actually get some college credits to that. So we offer that. But what we're really excited, and many of you will be getting an email if it didn't go out already today, from us offering from the City University School of Labor Studies. And this kind of goes hand in hand with materials when we're jumping around and kind of talking about that, on social justice and urban studies. And we're working right now with City University on 13 credits for each one of those certificates that can be used for your 30 above. I know some people call me and they say, I know that the credits are there. They're $5,500 because they are college credits. So if you want to use them for an additional master's at some point, if you want to use them, many of us started around the same time, and we had those old P credits that are out there. You couldn't use those for an additional master's. These credits you can. And what I love about them, and I know some of our colleagues out there in District 22, they requested that we have a workshop right within the district. I shouldn't say a workshop, a class. So School of Labor Studies is willing to hold a class if we have 10 to 12 teachers, paras, etc. Anyone that's willing to take those classes will hold it right in your school building. So they are willing to send the professors to us as soon as they go live. In the spring, they'll still be remote, but as soon as they go live, so you don't even have to travel. So if you have 2 schools near each other, 3 schools near each other, if you have 1 school that needs their 30 above and paraprofessionals are going for either an undergrad or a master's, we would be able to supply the professor to them. What I like about it, besides the fact that it talks about culturally responsive, it's also going to talk about the communities in which we teach. And I'm going to speak for myself. I started teaching at PS 180 in Harlem. I knew very, very little about the community. I learned because I worked along some great master teachers, and there was a teacher center in that school that we took walking tours of the neighborhood. I learned more about Harlem in that year. I drank more in Harlem that year, but I had a lot going on that year that I learned about in the community. And that's what we love pairing up with this one particular program, because depending on where you work, if you're in Bay Ridge, if you're in Bayside, if you're in Baychester, like wherever you are, we can talk about the community and figure out so that you could learn about the community that you're teaching into, which is so important to our children and the communities. So it kind of goes along with what's available there for the culturally responsible materials. We're kind of doing that hand in hand, not completely answering that. We're also working with, Mary Jo and I have been working with Monroe College, and what we're working on with them is a bilingual extension and a special ed license for those paraprofessionals that are interested in that, or those teachers that want to continue that. That comes at a reduced rate. You can use that as your 30 above, or obviously you can use it as your master's degree. But we are going to be pushing out, and something that I've been working with our team on is perhaps having some kind of open house. I don't know what it's going to look like, but everything that's available for you to get a 30 above on, and what you're interested in, what you might have already, what you might want to move to. So we're working on that as a team, and I'm hoping to have that to you later in the spring. Always our course catalog, College of St. Rose, College of New Rochelle, all of the schools that we have worked with in the past are still available to you for all of that. So those are on the money piece. That's easy. Curriculum. So I go to some of your schools, I've visited many of them, and I am shocked by some of the curriculum that's being used that is not necessarily, especially for our youngest learners, which is my area. I'm kind of shocked because it is not necessarily appropriate for our students. And I know Karen would always speak to this, that we are doing things, we're asking kids to write a paragraph in kindergarten. It blows my mind. It's inappropriate. But with that being said, every school has a school leadership team. Every school should be talking about their curriculum there. Your PLT team, which I know Mary Jo alluded to, Karen has spoken about, your professional development and your IL team have become one. And so now that they're one, you can have a discussion about how that's all going to play out, what kind of curriculum you're going to use, and that's an appropriate venue. In addition to that, we are happy to send a teacher center representative over to your school to assist you with those conversations. So our teacher center people, whether it's a site person or a field staff, have been trained. As soon as something comes out, we send them to training, we make sure that they understand it, and then we all talk about it. So some of the best training is going on there, but then we talk about the curriculums and how some may be more appropriate than others, and some might hit the standards in a more appropriate way, and some for our L students and for our special ed students, and quite frankly, for all of our students, might not really hit it the way it should and may not be as engaging as it really should. So we can go through that with you. And if you're requesting that, you can let Karen and her team know, or feel free to contact me, and we'll try to get somebody out to your school to talk to your school leadership team, especially for those of you that have principals that really are collaborative and want to work with you. We can absolutely help them in order to infuse new curriculum and be the backbone to support the training that goes on for that curriculum. In terms of culturally responsive, so I just want to say everyone should have gotten some kind of library, like the old mayor's library. There's a culturally responsive library that went out to schools. Hopefully you've gotten that. If you haven't, start talking to your principal. Again, talk to your school leadership team, talk to your chapter leader, and we'll try to follow up on that. Since that's a DOE initiative, it's a little bit difficult for us to get a feeler of exactly who's getting it, how many people are getting it. We don't necessarily get straight answers on all of those pieces, but they should be coming out. We also have books that we have worked on and lists of books that we're working on to make sure that they are available to you. Obviously, if you have a school librarian, there have been Joe Coletti, who works on our team, has been working with the librarians to make sure those books almost all, not every single one, so I want to be clear, are available virtually so that you can actually use them even if your school hasn't received them for free through the Department of Education, so that you can share those and you can make sure that you're using them with your class. And then I think, Karen, I'm just going to
Mary,
throw out one other piece. Go ahead, sorry.
We have to close in 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, so
promise
I
to
will
get
just
off
say
at 6 on the dot.
the SEL materials are being sent out to all schools. 600 schools have received those materials. So that should be coming out to your school shortly. Got it, Karen.
Thank you, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you to the elementary team. Thank you to Leroy Barr. I just hope that you all had some time just to see the faces of the union, and that these are the folks that are working tirelessly every day trying to make sure that we are so much more than contracts. This is really just about our quality of life. This is about ensuring that our students have what they need. And so we will have more of this, but know that you can also, and Marisol will drop it back in the chat one more time, please join our early childhood committee as well as our elementary committee. And there it's more conversational. We bring guest speakers, but this really was to give you an overview of all that the union has to offer. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and have a great evening and a wonderful holiday to everybody. Be well.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome, all.
We have a survey in the chat. If anyone is still logging in, they could also do the survey in the chat.
Did you really? Nice.